We're here
Well,
for you. So, Josh Pierce, digital artist, and I guess you want to just like take us through how you got started.
sure, man. Yeah, I'm Josh Pierce. I'm a digital artist, and I want to say thanks for having me on here today. Yeah, I'm out here in Southern California today. This is where I live now. And yeah, where are you located, by the
New York
way?
City.
Oh, you're in New York City. Okay. What's the weather like there?
It was like mid 50s, and then now it's raining, so that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, yeah. My parents just texted me. They're driving through Michigan right now. They had some snow, and I was like, geez, I don't know what's going on. It's like 80, 88 degrees here today. Although it's overcast today. It was 88 yesterday. It's overcast today. It's a little bit chillier. It feels nice. I get a little hoodie situation. Feel a lot better than yesterday. It was pretty hot, but we do all right here.
Yeah, I would trade.
Um, yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I like it here. I like living here. I've lived in LA for the last 10 years. And yeah, so basically, like for the last 10 years, I came out here. I've been freelancing, I've been a freelance digital artist really since around 2007 when I quit my full time job um, and and just started doing freelance on the side and picking up jobs. And then I went to grad school from 2007 to 2009. I went to school down in Savannah at SCAD, and there's a lot of designers that go through there, a lot of artists that go through there. It's an incredible city. It's an incredible school. Just shout out to them because they're amazing people with a lot of good connections. And so I studied broadcast design and motion graphics when I was down there. And so and I lived and worked around Philly. I'm from Philly originally, so you can probably hear a little bit of Philly accent in me, maybe a little bit, not too much, but a little bit still hangs on. But yeah, so I was living around Philly, doing some small stuff, working at a few boutique shops for visual design and motion graphics, and then I just decided to make the jump, and it was either go to New York City, uh, which is where you are, of course, or come to LA, because that's just where all the work really is. It really was at the time. That was 2010, and it's starting to expand more. I think people are starting to work remotely a bit more, which I like. I think that's cool. Like I see a lot of people moving, like Denver, Atlanta, Austin, are kind of blowing up right now. Um, but it's all over. I think that's great. So I came out here and started working, and so basically, like for the last 10 years, I've been kind of in the sports world. Like been doing a lot of motion graphics for sports teams. I started with that, and I was doing a ton of sports work. You know, like 2010 to 2015, doing a lot of in-stadium graphics. We're doing Super Bowls and like the jumbotrons, like the stuff that goes around the outside, and like
Hmm.
well, all that stuff, and it was a lot of fun. Big brands, all the major sports teams. I did all the graphics in the Giant Stadium one year, and I got to go there and see those too. We were doing a lot of stuff for the NBA, like court projections, projection mapping on the court, and doing some really cool, fun stuff with that. And I worked for a projection mapping company in Philly too, and that was a lot of fun too. And I still have a lot of interest in like seeing what can be done with projection mapping, like going forward with pure art, because a lot of really cool interactive stuff that can happen. But yeah, and then like 2015 until 2020, I pretty much worked for NFL Network. So I got a job over there and worked my way up to art directing a show that aired 5 days a week called Fantasy Live. And we pretty much talked about fantasy football. And, I got to art direct the show, which was great. It was really cool. I was still a freelancer. I'm still freelancing, and so it was cool. I would work there like 7 months out of the year, and then be and then have like 5 months off, because it was basically seasonal work, just work for the NFL, and then I would do, I would do side projects. I would do music graphics and then art, and um, you know things that I had a lot of interest in. And while I was there, a friend of mine challenged me to start doing Instagram daily renders, right? And that was 2018. And so I started off with like um, really like simple abstract stuff. Like I was real into Joey Camacho and raw and rendered his kind of work, and like I followed him and I followed people, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna like make some stuff with cinema, like make some cool things. And I got, I built a new computer. I got Octane. I made a couple renders. That was like 20, I was actually like 2015. I made a couple renders and I sort of stalled out and I like lost steam. But I picked it back up again in 2018 and I just started like rolling with it. I started making stuff every day, and amazingly, like the technology kind of showed up at the right time, you know, because I've always had a love of nature, you know, and a lot of the stuff I had been doing in cinema for many years, I'd been very like hard surface model, abstract geometric forms, a lot of typography, a lot of text, um, you know, just that sort of like big lens flare. I mean, that was like the sports world, right? Like big lens flares, like big, sound effects, and just like touchdown, you know, all that kind of stuff. And like as much as I enjoyed doing that, and I love the simplicity of it. I love the art of like generating, the energy that goes into creating those kind of animations. Um, I love nature. I grew up camping and being outside and hiking, and like anytime I can step away from the computer and go outside and be in nature is like beautiful experience for me. Like that's what I love. So like the technology really showed up then, and I got into um, World Machine and World Creator for sculpting landscapes. And I just started discovering, all these resources, Arty Textures and CG Bookcase and Forester for cinema, 3D Quakers Forester, which like is now everywhere and everybody uses it and it's amazing. Um, and of course, Octane, the power of Octane that allows the textures to be like super high fidelity with the displacement maps and everything. Like I don't know how technical you want me to get, but like I love talking about technical stuff with art.
Get it?
But like, yeah, I mean, like the way that the speed with like the two main things about Octane that changed the way I create art were number one, the displacement maps, because they were so fast and they were so high fidelity. Like you could do this kind of stuff with cinema render, like cinema's built-in render, but it took hours, where in where in Octane it's like instant, and I don't know how they do it. I don't really I don't really understand it. Something to do with voxels, but like um yeah, so like the way the displacement maps were able to render these incredibly high fidelity, natural looking textures, especially for like grounds and rocks and dirt and tree bark and just like this beautiful stuff. That was a game changer. And then the other part of Octane was the incredibly powerful scatter tool, which lets you like do millions of clones. Whereas like the you know, cinema's cloning tool is like okay, but it doesn't have the ability to do those kind of like millions and millions of trees and flora and just all those plants everywhere,
Mm.
like you would see in nature in a really natural way.
Is is there
Um,
a way to like bring that to like the metaverse and stuff like that. Like I feel because you mentioned like voxels, and then there's like that whole voxel universe that people
Mhm.
use to like host things like paintings and stuff. And then there's metaverse, but like I feel like it would be much more aesthetically pleasing if like your work represented within the metaverse, right? Be it water or landscape or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
instead of like 2D little cubes, right? Like I just feel like it would look much cooler as like something built out that way, and then you could buy that land. I'd be much more interested in buying that digital land versus I don't know whatever the video game is. I can't think of it off the top of my head. That
mine.
yes, yes. Like I don't want to buy Minecraft land. Like I want to buy Josh Pierce land. Like
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. um, yeah, no, I mean that would be incredible. Like I want like there's so much technology I want to learn and I want to like get into. I've looked a little bit of the metaverse stuff and like my friend's kids play Minecraft and I'm like this is cool, but like come on, it's like low poly, but they're into it,
mm,
and they're into it, and it's weird how it's like it's almost got this nostalgia aesthetic to it,
mm,
and like you see it with like crypto punks and like there's just like a lot of 8-bit stuff out there, retro wave and that sort of like synth wave vapor wave retro punk look to everything is very hip and like I think it's cool. um I think it's great and I think it speaks culturally to like our digital age, and this kind of um like techno utopia that was envisioned during that time in the 80s. Like we had this kind of like, oh my god, computers have arrived, right? Like computers arrived in the 80s and it was like, oh my god, like what is the future going to look like if everything is digital? And we had like Tron and we had all these like
the
great
Matrix.
cultural, yeah, like then Matrix, yeah, like later in the 90s, like but like we had like this kind of like pac like I'm thinking about like Pac-Man and like Galaga
Mm,
and like just this kind of like there was this veneration of the digital media that like people saw was like, oh my god, this is going to be the future utopia. And now, like 40 years later, it's amazing. Like 1980 to 2020, it's now 40 years later when we've like kind of arrived at this like very digital world, and like we almost live completely in a digital world, especially in the last year, which has been like this crazy I mean, everybody's been stuck in front of a screen. We've become almost completely used to it at this point. But like, uh, yeah, it's kind of like we're trying to recreate that dream that was hatched, in the 80s with that aesthetic, that sort of like vibe, and now we're having this like incredible throwback to it in the 80s and now we're moving into like 90s nostalgia. You're right.
mm.
We're going there and I'm cool with that. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm a '90s baby, so I don't know, semi here for it. My parents dressed me like shit through a lot of the '90s, so I don't really know. I got some pictures that are not flattering. Not that a lot of pictures are flattering, but some worse ones. Um, I guess to like kind of delve into the art, I can kind of throw some up on the screen, and I'm curious, like where, because like obviously you have great landscapes, but then you have kind of like the, I guess how do you want to describe your art? But like for me, like looks very much like I grew up playing Halo. I don't know if you ever played Halo, and so like a lot of those scenes, like outside of like the portal type pictures that you have, right? Which I'll just start throwing these up. But outside of
Sure.
that, like some of them look like the landscape is like getting destroyed by like alien lasers a little bit. Some of them have
Yeah.
like like Portal esque. Some of them have like the actual Halo esque type look. Like that to me is like what really draws me in because I was just like a huge Halo fan growing up, and so yeah,
Yeah.
I guess like what how do you describe your art would be the first question, and then like secondary, like what what got you to start making phenomenal landscapes with these rings or beams
Mhm.
of light.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, how do I describe my art? Was the first question. Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of spiritually surrealist fantasy, right? It's surrealism, it's fantasy, and it's sort of Um, there's a visionary art aspect to it. Um, I grew up, two of my like major influences growing up, who who weren't in the NFT space but now are. Like but before I came in, they weren't around, but they both showed up, and it was Roger Dean and Alex Gray. Um, Roger Dean from like the sort of like fantasy landscape perspective. I was also like a progressive rock fan. I love the band Yes. I was a huge fan of the band Yes. And then their art, which he did all of the covers for, and he did all of all of their artwork for. I was just in love with it, and I would like print it out on like 8.5 by 11 paper and just like hang it in my room, you know. And I would paint stuff like that too. And then Alex Gray too, who his style is not really um, at all similar to my style, but the themes that he talks about, or the themes that he tries to address, which is this sort of um, visionary journey through like using art as a way to like express our creative visionary journey that is very personal and also like very much connected to the spiritual dimension and connected to humanity as a whole, and the way that art connects with people. um, he uses a lot of those themes, and so he's always been an inspiration to me. So how do I describe my art? Is sort of this spiritual surrealism.
Right.
Natural spiritual surrealism. I don't really know how else to put it, but yeah, I mean, you also talked about Halo, and while I never played Halo, but I do. But the artist who art directed most of Halo, I'm a huge fan of.
Mhm.
I don't know his name, but he goes by Spark,
Okay.
um, and he's put out a couple of books. And if you go and you look through his work, like you'll be like, oh, yeah, this looks like Josh Pierce stuff. But obviously he hand draws everything.
Mm.
But the way he uses composition and color has had a huge influence on me, and I would be remiss not to mention him as another influence. The way he uses figures to create scale, and the way he uses water to create this sense of like depth and reflection and sky. And he's just incredible. I think he's thrown up some NFTs. I think he's on Foundation. Um, and I think he's sold some stuff, but he's like famous already. Like he's very successful. I don't know if he has too much interest. I've never talked to him. I'd love to have a chance. He's one of my idols. I'd love to have a chance to chat with him one day. But the work is out there, and it's really cool. I love landscapes, and I love um, I just love nature and the way it plays with color, and the way that like it's sort of it has its own sense of like randomness, and you can kind of like when you create a landscape, it's kind of like it's kind of like rolling the dice a little bit. You just have these sort of forms, and you go into it, and you don't have to worry about like, okay, well, this tree doesn't make sense here. Like, maybe it does make sense there. And then it can like suggest something new to you, and then you can sort of explore like, oh, okay, like I'm sculpting. I go through and I take my landscape. I usually start with like a flat plane, and then I just start to sculpt hills, little rivers and valleys, and that process to me is like incredibly like deeply connecting, like very like meditative, and like sometimes I'll use music, and sometimes I'll just do it in silence. But it's a lot of like it's like hand sculpting. That's what I grew up doing. I would mess around with like Sculpey, and I love to sculpt stuff. Like I love to work with my hands. And I wish there was a way that like I could create landscapes. Like the VR stuff is like it's coming along a little bit. Sorry, I'm bouncing around, but
All good.
um, I wish there was a way that like I could sculpt landscapes with my hands,
Hmm.
instead of with a mouse. Maybe the technology may come soon, but the metaverse stuff, the VR stuff, uh, getting there.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the there's like that sandbox thing where like as you overlay it, it like re-sprays down like the lighting, right? And so like the lighting basically does like the different coloration. So it'll be like, green, and then as you like dig further down, it'll turn into blue. And then, as you like pile up sand higher, it'll go towards like a yellowish reddish. Let me see if I can
Mm,
pull this up. It's very like it's not something that you can make, true landscapes with like trees and stuff like that. But in terms of like
mhm.
formulating like rough mountain to plain type thing, um, I think it would be like helpful or at least just like fun to play with. Sandbox.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Let's see.
I like to mess around. Um, I love World Creator and I love World Machine.
Mhm.
They have like these incredible erosion type of algorithms. So like you can go in and so sometimes I use that and sometimes I use I'll hand sculpt the terrain. Um, that sounds like a lot of fun. Like being able to like I want to be able to combine both, like where I can sculpt a mountain and say and sort of draw in a river, and then like have algorithmic rain come in, erode one side surface of the mountain and then like form into a waterfall and
Mhm.
carve out a canyon in this area, which it does. Like you can do those kind of things algorithmically. It's just like the initial setup of like sculpting how you want the terrain to be is a little wonky. Um, so yeah, and I would love to be able to I'd love to be able to sculpt that a little bit and then kind of algorithmically erode things
Mhm.
better. But like I said, there's so many tools out there, and like I just continue to learn. And like if I had 1,000 years, I don't think I could learn all the things I want to learn.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's definitely. I mean, from talking to like a lot of artists, and just people in general, the COVID time has been this like great like pause to be able to like learn things, focus on yourself, and like all that kind of stuff. And for me, like it's just like, dude, this like there's just too many avenues to even like try to put. I mean, for me, like I'm trying to kind of grow my wealth in my like late 20s and stuff like that, and like a little bit towards retirement. And so like there's just like too many avenues to like try to retire to, and there's like the risk and stuff, but then like that's all learning. This has been learning. I'm sure all like the 3D sculpting and stuff is all like it. I need to start relying on experts, which
Yeah,
you are the expert, and your thing is not just but the 3D and modeling and stuff like that. But for me, like I'm very like jack of all trades, and it's been a struggle to try and like do well with this, speak better through this, and then learn how to edit and everything like that. So I can definitely relate.
yeah, man. We all just do the best we can one day at a time. It's all just like a learning process. Like that's what's super cool about like NFT space right now, and art, and everything that's going on. It's like it's so it just it's so like easily accessible for most people. Like I feel like a year ago or 2 years ago, like if somebody had asked me to like come on do a live stream and talk about my art on my podcast,
Mhm.
I'd be like, oh my god, like I have to like prepare all this stuff and like make do this and that, like, and it would be like super professional. Like everything is so casual
Mhm.
around here, like Clubhouse, you either love it or you hate it. I mean, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Like with the right people in there, it's good. It's always about the people. Actually, I was in Clubhouse yesterday with you. You were in there.
Yeah.
I came in and listened for a while with Justin Muller,
Mhm.
who I've gotten to know a little bit. And he's a super cool guy. It's amazing, like just the community, the connections. Um, Especially like I didn't have a Twitter before NFTs.
Mhm.
Um, and so I just like hopped on Twitter and was like, hey, what's up, everybody? Like, I make art. This is my thing. and then of course Nifty and Super Rare and having some success with that stuff. Getting my name out there, and then Paris Hilton comes in and she's like, "Hey, I'm doing NFTs," and then she buys a bunch of my work and starts tweeting about me, and it's like this is crazy. This is cool. Like how can I? And I actually reached out to her and got a message back from her, and she said, really love your work, and I said let's work together sometime. I don't know. I haven't had much conversation with her, but it's crazy. It's like that's a you know how nobody could have predicted that
Mm.
that would happen. Like these kind of people would be having like personal relationships, with artists, and the way that it's taken artists out from behind the scenes in a lot of ways, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. Like with Fuck Renders Drop with Zed and Gabe Damas, um, that that was super cool because I don't know that much about it, but like the work was incredible, But in the past, like you would have seen Zed's name, and that probably would have been it. Well, this wouldn't have even existed because like who would be buying it? But if you would go to his concert, you would see the visuals, and those people didn't really get the recognition. And I think that's what we were talking about yesterday in the room a little bit. Musicians. That was I don't know the musician. What was his name again?
Disclosure.
Disclosure.
Yeah.
So, yeah. See, like my musical taste like often left field, and,
Yeah. Yeah,
obviously it's huge,
mm,
and that's happening today. So
mm.
best of and that's
Yeah.
gonna be.
The
But
drop actually went super well. Yeah. I think you're definitely, spot on. I think it's like awesome to see, I've mentioned this before, but like, pick your favorite, artist and then their favorite album. Like there's an artwork that's attached to that to you is like the face of the music, right? Like you don't just think of like, whatever the sound wave or whatever it is, right? Like you think
yeah,
of like that picture, like for me, Californication, right? Like there's that album cover, right? Like Green Day, there's that album cover, right? Like for Disclosure, like there's the face, right? And so it's cool to see this like profit sharing aspect, this, you know, just collective effort where, I've talked about this with some artists where, I mean, imagine somebody goes on tour and they have, the Josh Pierce background, like VJ visuals, and like that's what's animated to their music, like that would be awesome. And then that way, like that gives you some credence, it gives them some credence, and then like it's almost no longer just music. It's like a traveling like show performance thing that you get to like witness, and
yeah,
knock your sock off with some heavy bass.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like just getting the recognition, I think, is huge for artists because like there's so many bands, and there's so many acts, there's so many music acts that have incredible visuals, and it's such a huge part of their live shows. And I feel like the artists get, the real, some of the real acts, like they will recognize the artists and talk about them and elevate them. Um, I'm thinking about like Radiohead a little bit, and like Pink Floyd, um, or Roger Waters now. But the way that I saw Roger Waters like a couple of years ago, and that show was just like insane. Like I couldn't see the guys on the stage, right? But what you see is the visuals. You see these incredible. It was all very political, and a lot of they were playing a lot of the Wall and Animals, um, and it's just like these incredible visuals, and like I think you know I think that they recognized the artist, but I couldn't tell you who it was. Whereas like I feel like it's almost like who's head, I feel like who's headlining is gonna maybe kind of change a little bit, or it could help to draw people in. If you're a smaller musical act and you have a huge artist like doing your visuals, people might come just to see the visual. I
Mm,
mean, that's a possibility in the future. I think it could be like a really cool idea. You know what I mean?
mm. I know Tipper has like some pretty famous people who put on like their VJs, and so like
Mhm.
those guys are pretty renowned. Where, I mean, it's more in like that. I don't know what exactly, like just like very trippy music, very trippy visuals, you know. And so Tipper has had some like really good success with elevating like their artists, and then their artists kind of going on their own. I think one is Totemical. I
Huh?
know another one is collected by Goldra, but I can't remember. He has this tiger piece by him, and I'm not going to be able to find the actual name of the artist. So sorry about that. But the it's it's wild, right? Like, I mean, I like imagine people coming in and doing like a 30 minute or an hour long like VJ set for somebody. Like, what is that ticket going to sell for? It would be insane. You know, like you'd have to have, you know, like the top possible artist. You know, maybe it's like a mixture of different people where like he's got like the weekend for the first 15 minutes and then, you know, like so on. But people could put on a concert now and just be the VJ set and just pick like, you know, some top tier artist to, hey, you want you want a little like, you know,
You
split
want
some
to play the
cash.
music, you want to play the accompaniment to the.
And that's pretty
Well,
awesome.
that's kind of like how it was, like that's kind of how it is in like theater, you know, like you have like or like musical theater or
Mm,
like opera, you know, you have kind of like uh you have like the people on stage and then you have like the musicians performing down below. You know what I mean? It's almost like that. Like, you have this sort of like, you know, the people like doing the show, and then you have like the musicians sitting in the pit down below and you don't see them, you know. It's like it's almost like it's flipped around, you know,
mm.
which is kind of interesting. um that's kind of an interesting concept. I never thought about that.
Yeah, I think.
But yeah, dude, yeah, it's a beautiful thing, you know, to see artists being elevated like that. And Tycho is another one that
Mm,
I wanted to bring up. You know, I'm a huge fan of Tycho. Like that's my jam, and like it's amazing to see his work and like how he's incorporated design. He sort of does both, which is kind of cool. I don't know if he does all the visuals for all of his shows. I don't imagine if he does, but maybe he does. I don't know, but yeah, it's been cool to see him come into space and like drop some stuff and you know have his visual representation out there, because that's like what you were saying. Like you have this visual idea of the music. Like you think about a song, you don't think about the waveform. Like I think about you know his designs. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool stuff.
mm. So I guess back on like your art and, you know, like what do you do in terms of like inspiration? You mentioned that you're like a big camper, big into hiking. Like, is that just like your daily kind of reset, or would you kind of look into almost like a Pinterest of like places and then kind of like build out from that, or like what's your design process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, yeah, like so just to go back, you know, I sort of started in that world of doing abstract shapes and then building off of that, and then kind of like moving into you know doing this natural landscapes and adding abstract shapes into the landscapes. Um, and I kind of like got into this groove um, of building, you know, these places, these beautiful places that I wanted to visit. You know, like that was kind of like my focus. You know, because I used to just go through magazines when I was a kid and like look at like tropical paradises and like imagine myself being there and what it would feel like to be in that area, like to be in that space. And so like to answer your question, like today, you know, I use tons of I use tons of references. Not necessarily references, but inspirations, you know. And I use a lot of nature photography. There's a guy named Ryan Rusatka who's a friend of mine, and his Instagram is just it's just a nonstop stream of the most incredible nature photography like you'll ever see. The way he frames landscapes and everything, it's just incredible. Um, and I may actually end up doing a collab with him soon, which would be really cool. I'd really love to do something with a photographer. So I use that, and then I like to, you know, I love, you know, ArtStation, DeviantArt, you know, Pinterest, Instagram, Tumblr, Behance. whatever's out there, I'll just go and whatever is aggregating stuff in a way that I'm liking at the moment, I'll go through there. And mostly what I do when I do that is I look at color schemes. I love to look at different color combinations and like refine my sensibility, for like how colors are combined. And it's like, because you can take two colors and have them like say so many different things, or you can take like a set of three colors and have it say so many different things, like depending on lighting and mood and everything, and balance, especially like balance. If you can go really heavy with one color and then just have like a little dot of like red, and it like evokes like such an incredible feeling. Um, so I look at a lot of painting, and a lot of graphic design to check out like color schemes. Like I'm looking at the painting over your shoulder right now, or the image over your shoulder right now, and it's like this nice blue green with red, and like but it's dark.
Mm.
You do the same thing like with a light color scheme, and it would say something completely different. Um, but so compositionally, I look at a lot of nature photography, and I love Sparth and his work. And then for color and all that, for the color side of things, I just look through all kinds of stuff and I'll be like, oh, okay. I have certain things I gravitate towards. I love the teal orange. Um, Everybody loves the teal orange.
I was going through a big phase with like the movie posters for like a
I
while.
know
Everything was teal orange.
teal orange is good. We love teal orange. I think
Hmm.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful for a reason. And I love, that's like, complementary colors. Teal orange is complementary. Like I love red green. Like, and it's Christmas, but like, you know, if you do it right, it looks great. Actually just did like, so like last year I got into, this is just like another fun thing that I started doing. Like I got into doing this like sets of three,
Hmm.
you go through my Instagram to see like I'll do a set of three, um, I'll do a set of three pieces that is all in the same like universe, all in the same like color scheme, same theme, same environment, and same color scheme. And that's actually been like an incredibly cool process for me, because I used to just sit down and make something new every day. Um, and that's a great way to work. And I absolutely love the everyday process. Um, and like um, sorry, I'm bouncing around a
You
lot.
good? I pulled up your Instagram so people could see.
Okay. Yeah. So like, I love like the daily process of things. Like it's a huge part of me is and I wanted to talk about it a little bit, like just to say like, you know, I started doing this. This is kind of answering your question. Like I started doing this as a meditation, right? Like I was trying to find ways to incorporate meditation like in my day in a way that like, because I was having a really hard time like just sitting and doing meditation, um, and focusing on breathing, whatever it is, or like use a mantra, um, because like I need that kind of like mental health practice to like stay focused and to stay like refreshed and feel good. And it just like it dawned on me that like when I was younger, I used to just sit and draw, right? I would do a lot of like pen and ink line drawing, and like when I would do that, I would feel like a lot calmer. I would feel like I could let go of, whatever was going on up here, thinking about this, that, the other thing, anxiety, fear, planning for the future, what am I doing tomorrow? What's happening this day? Oh, I forgot I'm supposed to do this. I got a million things on my mind. But just to like take a deep breath and like let the mind kind of settle, like there's that analogy of like settling a clear pool, when you stop messing with the water, all the sediment goes to the bottom and it's nice and clear. That's sort of like how I meditate. But yeah, so the art started as like, I'm going to sit down for an hour and just do art, you know, and that, and it really helped. It really was a huge change for me, like emotionally. Um, it just became a channel for me to like for to channel negative emotions like into into something that I could communicate with other people. And so like I think what comes through in my art is this sense of like presence, right? Like I'm with I'm with the art when I'm making it. I'm not thinking about anything else. It's like a channel, right? Like I'm channeling this kind of like the muse, like the muse comes down from like above and it goes through into the art. And then I pass it on to people, and that's my goal, really. Like that's my goal with the art is to connect with people so that people the best thing for me is when somebody says, your art um like made my day. Like I saw this and I felt better. I was having a bad day and I saw this and I felt better. And like, or I looked at your art and it brought me to a place of peace, and I'm like, that's fucking awesome, because that's what it does for me. Like I sit down and I make my art and it brings me to a place of peace. And that's what I've been doing for years now. Like the last couple of years, I've just been making this art because it it's because it helps me, it helps me to like let go, and turn things over and just put the creative energy out there. So that's the point of the whole daily process thing. And then I started doing um, these little groups of three, right? Where like I I sit down and like I make a piece one day, and then and I get that experience of like you know um, being with the art, the creative process, channeling the flow, and then like I'll take out that same piece again, and I'll like rip it apart and like start putting things back together in a different way. Um, and then I get to create something new out of that. But when I do that, I get to like refine a few things. So that's actually been cool because sometimes like I don't have enough time in one day to refine things to like a really high level, you know. But when I'm kind of like reusing the same thing 3 days in a row, like I'll get to do some more refinements, and then each day like I'll learn a little bit more about this next thing, or I'll like create something that I can use again later. So that's been like a really cool process, and I just try to remain like open to um, I just try to remain like open minded to like you know the process of like um you know learning something new, and then like, oh, okay, well, like maybe next year like things are going to be totally different and I'll like work in a completely different way. You know what I mean?
Mm. Do you think that your style overall is going to kind of evolve, change, or is this just kind of like natural day by day, whatever happens happens?
Yeah, I mean, like I think it has evolved somewhat. Like I think there's certain themes, like there's a certain line that it's followed, and I think it's going to continue on that line. Like I don't think next year like I'm going to be doing cyberpunk. Like it's just probably not me. Like I like some of that stuff, and if you dig through my work, like you'll see a few things here and there that have like um, futuristic stuff and some cyberpunk like elements and some like retro wave and some cool stuff like that. And I'll experiment from time to time with things, but like I really think I've found my groove with this kind of like this sort of like natural surrealist spirituality, you know.
Mm.
And to answer your question about like you know, the kind of like abstract shapes that I use and stuff, it's I try to tell people like, I use the abstract shapes and I use those sort of like, those glowing energy forms to like kind of be a representation of like that which we cannot really represent. It's sort of like that intangible element, that is there and not there, that like if I took a photo of this place, you wouldn't see it. But like this is a, it's an artistic interpretation. There's some sort of spirit there, right? So it's a spiritual dimension that like that's what it's speaking to. And so like a lot of people ask that, and thought I would just answer that question too.
Nice. Yeah. Um, so I have a 4 o'clock that I have to hit. We're still on time, but I wanted to hit these two things in particular because I just
Yeah.
like them in terms of closing out. And so the first question is, if you're in my shoes, what question would you ask yourself?
Oh my God. What question would you ask me? Hmm. Do you think your work is going to be worth something in 10 years? I don't know. I mean, I think people wonder that, in the NFT space. Um, I'm gonna be making work for the next 10 years no matter what, you know.
Mm.
So like if you're out there as a collector and you wonder if it's a good investment or not, I can't tell you whether it's gonna be a good investment or not. But I can tell you that I'm gonna keep making art, you know. Um, I have you know, if anything, this experience has made it more clear that I'm going to continue to create my personal art as a main focus for the foreseeable future because I've done it as a sort of on the side for the last couple of years, and it's grown into something like so beautiful that I'm like, this is it. This is what I want to be doing. Um, I don't know. I can't think of a better question than that. It's sort of a
No, it's
silly
good.
one.
It's good. It's good. And then yeah, the last question that I have is, what do you think your purpose is in life?
What is my purpose in life? Well, that's a great question. I mean, that's a really good question. I have two answers for that. I The first one is, I think that as a conscious human being in the universe, it is my purpose for being here is to raise the conscious awareness of the universe itself. It's like I am a part of the universe and I'm here to observe the universe its into greater awareness, right? So raise the conscious vibration of the universe through spiritual practice and through communication and through um, you know spiritual transcendentalism. That's a very weird and bad explanation. um, but the more concrete, down to earth answer is to be myself and help others. That's my point in life. Be who I am, be the best me I can be, and to be of service to others in whatever way I can possibly be of service. And mostly that has to do with, volunteering my time to help counsel other people and to help, to help lift people up who are in bad situations. And I do a lot of that on the side. I don't really talk too much about it. I don't really need to because it's not something I need to advertise. But be myself and help others.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's all we can really hope for, I think.
Yeah.
I guess so. While we still have some time, I guess like, was there ever a period while you were doing art that you were kind of like, I don't know, fuck this shit, or maybe I got to do something else, or like that you almost gave up?
Um, yeah, actually. So like in 2013, I was like done. Um, but like 2013, I quit drinking and I got sober. And but I really didn't want to. I really didn't want to do motion design anymore. But I was really in the corporate world, But I didn't want to touch cinema or After Effects again. I was working a ton in cinema and After Effects. I wasn't making any of my own personal art. Um, yeah, I thought I would leave. I thought I might go do counseling. Um, and you know, there was a time too when I thought I would want to teach art, which is not really getting away from the art, but it's sort of a different path. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think what happened was I just listened to my heart. I just kept going one day at a time, just kind of like learn and see what happens next. And, you know, I got inspired to sit down and start creating again, and it turned into this. This has been great. It's been this incredible journey. And like I said, I mean, this is the only the beginning, for my art. I really haven't been doing this that long, of creating my own personal art. It's really only been about 3 years for me. So yeah,
Right. That's
lots more
awesome.
to come.
Yeah, man. No, it's perfect. Um, I don't want to, kind of take up too much time and then have to run in the middle of it. So thank you for the time, man. Like I've
Yeah,
been
thank
telling
you for
everybody.
having me.
Yeah, I mean, 6 months to a year, we'll run it back, and I don't know. I think in I don't think NFTs are leaving. Like I mean, I work and everything like that, but it's kind of like the genie out of the bottle, and you can't get that sucker back in there. It's just
No,
not happening.
perfect.
So yeah, I'm excited for the
It's
space.
incredible. Yeah.
I love the work, and yeah, I'm happy that you had the time today to hop on. So thank you for the time, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's just great to connect with awesome people in space. So I really appreciate the time.
All right, peace, man.
Have a good one. Bye bye.